US President Trump continues to attempt to bring about peace between Ukraine and Russia. His latest gambit is one of his most ambitious yet, a direct meeting with Vladimir Putin in Hungary. That nation is part of the European Union or EU, and Putin would have to fly into the airspace of several EU and NATO-aligned countries to get to Hungary. One nation has taken a stand. Poland has vowed to intercept Putin's jet and arrest him if he dares to fly into its territory. Russia's leader doesn't have permission to fly, Poland says, and Putin's entire Hungary meeting with Trump is now in jeopardy. A little over a month after it had to deal with Russia's drones entering its airspace, Poland has told Putin, in no uncertain terms, that its airspace is entirely closed to Russia. That doesn't just mean Russia's military aerial assets. Putin himself cannot travel over the country, and if he does, he risks being intercepted and arrested under a warrant from the International Criminal Court, or ICC. That's according to Poland's Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski. The Kyiv Post reports that Sikorski recently took part in a radio interview where he delivered his country's stern warning to the Russian president. Sikorski's comment was simple and to the point. "I cannot guarantee that an independent Polish court would not order the government to escort such a plane and hand over the suspect to The Hague," Sikorski declared. The Polish foreign minister is playing coy here. Merely suggesting that Putin could be arrested if he flies over Poland is enough to tell Russia's leader that the possibility is high. Sikorski may be intentionally trying to put the idea into the collective minds of the courts that he mentions. Or he may have already spoken to those courts and come up with a plan for what Poland would do if Putin is foolish enough to try to fly over its territory. Sikorski added, "I think the Russian side is aware of this when talking about Poland turning itself into a Putin no-fly zone. So if this summit takes place, hopefully with the participation of the victim of aggression, the plane will likely take a different route," Sikorski adds. That creates another question. If Poland is a no-go for Putin, what route could he take to reach Hungary? There certainly doesn't seem to be many real options. Putin isn't going to fly through Ukraine, which directly borders Hungary, because he knows that every Ukrainian jet and air defense system will be gunning for him the moment he crosses the border. Flying over Slovakia, which also borders Hungary, isn't an option because Putin would have to fly over Poland or Ukraine to get to Slovakia and arrive in Hungary from the north. As for the southeast, Romanian and Serbian airspace are options. The former is an EU and NATO member, making it very unlikely that it would approve Putin's flight. As for Serbia, Putin might have been able to fly over the country were it not for the fact that he'd have to cross Bulgarian airspace first. Again, that's a NATO and EU member nation. But hold on a second, it's only Poland that has said that it will arrest Putin if he tries to use its airspace. What about the likes of Romania and Bulgaria? As the Kyiv Post points out, every state, other than Poland, that Putin could ask to allow his plane safe passage is also an ICC member, just as Poland is. That doesn't necessarily mean that Romania and Bulgaria would divert Putin's plane and arrest him on sight, but it does mean they have the option, and with Poland leading the way, it's likely that neither Romania nor Bulgaria will be willing to allow a Russian flyover. Plus, like Poland, Romania and Bulgaria are signatories of the Rome Statute that underpins the entire ICC. That means they're duty-bound to arrest Putin under the ICC warrant if they get the opportunity. On the other hand, as Newsweek reports, the EU has taken an interesting decision to allow its member states to decide what they do when it comes to Putin's flight. The EU instituted a block-wide ban on all Russian planes entering EU airspace shortly after Putin invaded Ukraine. But when it comes to this potential trip to Hungary, the EU is perhaps looking at it as much from the perspective that the trip could lead to peace talks in the future as it is from the viewpoint of a Russian violation. So the EU is taking a hands-off approach. Newsweek reports that a spokesperson for the European Commission has already said that it's up to individual member states whether they maintain or lift the EU's flight ban on Russian aircraft. The spokesperson also pointed out that any meeting that moves forward just and lasting peace in Ukraine is welcome. Trump's meeting with Putin in Hungary could be seen as one of these steps closer to peace. Would that be enough to convince EU members and ICC signatory states to allow Putin passage? It's hard to say. Putin's only other option, and potentially the safest for the Russian leader, is to take a long route that passes over Turkey and several Balkan states to enter Hungary via the south. Turkey isn't a Rome Statute signatory nor an EU member, so it has those two things going for it from Putin's perspective. However, the country is a NATO member, and Russia has made no secret of its desire to dismantle NATO after Ukraine, so even Putin's best option is hardly safe. Speculation abounds as to how all of these other nations might react to Putin flying through their territory. Sikorski has made the Polish position clear. If Putin flies over Poland, he's going to get arrested. Russia, as you would expect, has reacted negatively to Sikorski's comments. On October 21st, UNN reported that the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has come down hard on his Polish counterpart for the comments. Poland has committed terrorist acts by refusing to offer Putin safe passage over its territory. And as is Russia's way, Lavrov has also claimed that Poland's decision goes a step further. Apparently, Poland has justified a terrorist act by encouraging Ukraine to attack the Nord Stream pipeline. And now Lavrov claims Poland is gearing up to carry out such actions itself against Russia. The hypocrisy runs rife here. It was only a few minutes ago that we were telling you how Russia just sent drones into Polish airspace, so it's ridiculous that Lavrov is now trying to accuse Poland of committing a terrorist act. The accusation is irrelevant anyway. Every country has the right to choose who does and doesn't enter its airspace. Putin isn't exempt from international aviation law, as much as Lavrov might want to act as though he is. As for the terrorist act of a potential arrest, Poland will be acting under the auspices of the ICC. Just because Russia doesn't recognize that court as legitimate, that doesn't mean that Poland is doing anything wrong by following through on its obligation to arrest Putin as a war criminal under an ICC warrant if Russia's leader enters its territory. In short, Lavrov is talking nonsense. We'll dig into the reasons why when it comes to the ICC and what its warrant actually says in a moment. First, the question has to be asked, what does Sikorski's statement mean for the future of Putin's meeting with Trump in Hungary? We know that Hungary itself, which Newsweek notes is also an EU member, though it often finds itself at odds with the wider bloc, has guaranteed that Putin will be safe from arrest if he arrives on the country's territory. That's strange in itself. Hungary is also an ICC member, meaning it has the same obligation to arrest Putin as Poland and every other ICC member. Having said that, Hungary is in the process of leaving the ICC. Plus, it's also previously welcomed Israel's leader Benjamin Netanyahu onto its territory, despite Netanyahu having an ICC arrest warrant of his own. As a founding member of the ICC, Hungary is in the process of changing everything about how it deals with people like Putin. That's great for Russia's leader, and it's why Hungary was chosen as the location for the latest meeting with Trump. However, as Poland made abundantly clear, it's not being in Hungary that's Putin's problem, it's getting there. And at the time the news broke about Sikorski's comments, the entire summit between Trump and Putin was up in the air. No official date had been set, and even a pre-summit meeting between Lavrov and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio had been postponed amid all the turmoil. There's breaking news about the state of this upcoming meeting that has been published as we create this video. We'll explain what that news is later. But now let's come back to the ICC issue, which is what underpins Sikorski's comments and has been the impetus for the threats of arrest being levied at Putin. Just what has the ICC said about Putin? And how would an arrest of Russia's president even work? What would it mean for the future? We'll start with the first of those three questions. Based in The Hague, which is in the Netherlands, the ICC is, as its name implies, an international court. The ICC's website says that the organization investigates and, where warranted, tries individuals charged with the gravest crimes of concern to the international community: genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the crime of aggression. The majority of the world recognizes and actively participates in the ICC as signatories of the Rome Statute. This United Nations treaty essentially binds each signatory to follow through with arrests based on any warrants that the ICC issues. Right now, there are 125 nations considered as state parties to the Rome Statute. Poland is one of them. Technically, what this means is that Poland doesn't really have a choice over whether it arrests Putin or not. As an ICC member, Poland is obligated to do so under the Rome Statute. That brings us back to what the ICC has to say about Putin. None of it's good. There has been an ICC arrest warrant out for Russia's president for around 2.5 years. That warrant was made official on March 17, 2023, with the ICC stating that it wishes to arrest Putin for a specific set of war crimes committed during his invasion of Ukraine. Under Putin's guidance, the ICC says, Russia has been unlawfully deporting and transporting members of Ukraine's population, including children, since the war began. That's a war crime, and Putin bears individual criminal responsibility, both for being directly involved in these deportations and transportations and for maintaining so little control over Russia's military that he allowed these crimes to happen. That means Putin can't argue that he knew nothing about the crimes of which he stands accused. Even if he didn't know anything, which is unlikely, his failure to control Russia's military would make him guilty. There certainly seems to be no doubt that the crimes the ICC accuses Putin and his cronies of committing have actually happened. In June, The Guardian published a report on Ukraine's kidnapped children, noting that as many as 35,000 are missing and believed to be held in either Russia or the Russian-occupied portions of Ukraine. These children have been abducted from care homes, snatched from their parents, or taken because Russian soldiers killed their parents, the outlet says. The Guardian also notes that 1,366 of Ukraine's kidnapped children have managed to make it back to their own country, per the Ukrainian organization Bring Kids Back. As for the rest, Russia has refused multiple calls to release the children it's taken back to Ukraine and has even accused its enemy of staging a show on the topic of lost children. So Russia is denying that it has done anything. What else is new? Russia's reaction to the warrant the ICC issued for Putin also shouldn't come as a surprise. Ukraine World explored that reaction in April 2023. It added that beyond the children we've already mentioned, a minimum of 2.5 million Ukrainians have been displaced up to that point in Putin's invasion. That only lends more credibility to the ICC's charges. However, it's the very credibility that Russia questions. Its argument is that as a non-signatory of the Rome Statute, Russia, and thus its people, can't be held under ICC law. It's certainly true that Russia isn't a part of the ICC. It signed the Rome Statute in 2000, though it never officially ratified its status. In 2016, 2 years after Putin annexed Crimea, Russia officially withdrew from the ICC. Russia's propagandists and officials were quick to argue against the ICC's warrant, as Ukraine World points out. The chair of the Federation Council Committee on Constitutional Legislation, Andrei Klishas, said the warrants were absurd before he called for the immediate issuance of arrest warrants for all ICC judges in an outright ridiculous statement. Apparently, irony isn't one of Klishas's strong points. Favored Putin mouthpiece Dmitry Medvedev threatened Germany in particular with the aiming of all our means at the country if it arrested Putin. And other Russian propagandists reeled off the usual threats of destruction for any nation that crosses Russia or does anything against Putin. As for a more official response to the warrant, the Kremlin did get around to releasing a statement that wasn't just a series of outright threats. Russia, as well as several other states, do not recognize the jurisdiction of this court, and accordingly, any decisions of this kind are null and void for Russia in terms of law, the Kremlin said of the warrant back in 2023. It's fair to say that Russia wasn't happy. However, Russia's refusal to participate in the ICC doesn't absolve Putin from being arrested and tried for war crimes under the ICC banner. The Russian rule of law won't apply if the ICC manages to get its hands on Putin. Granted, the ICC can't compel Russia to hand Putin over due to Russia's status as a non-signatory, but if Putin enters the territory of an ICC member, Russia won't have any say in the matter. Poland has made that clear, and the ICC will be able to prosecute Putin for the crimes it says he's committed if Poland were to arrest Russia's leader. That brings us to how an arrest like this would even work. As Newsweek reported in 2023, the ICC itself doesn't maintain a police force that it can use to arrest people. Instead, it relies on its Rome Statute signatories to do that work for it, which doesn't always work out in the ICC's favor. Newsweek highlights the case of the former Sudanese leader Omar al-Bashir, who has 2 ICC arrest warrants but has managed to visit several ICC member states without being arrested. An obligation to arrest does not mean a guarantee, it seems. But theoretically, the arrest of Putin would be carried out like any other arrest. A nation's police force, likely a federal force or equivalent, would take Putin into custody and then hand him over to The Hague so he can stand trial. Granted, Poland's version would see it forcing Putin's plane to land if it enters Polish airspace, but Poland is well within its rights to do that while chasing an arrest under an ICC warrant. So the question isn't so much how the arrest would go down, it's what would happen afterward. There are several theories. Sky News spoke to military analyst Sean Bell not long after the ICC issued its warrant. He pointed out that the warrant, regardless of how justified it might make it more difficult to convince Putin to come to the negotiating table when it comes to the Ukraine war. Anything that further isolates Putin's position has a risk. It risks him doubling down and focusing his determination to continue the conflict, claimed Bell. It doesn't seem to me that it's going to help to bring the war to an end anytime soon. Some might argue that Bell's words have come true, as it seems to be the situation that exists now. Trump wants to meet Putin in Hungary, but Poland says it won't allow that to happen because of the ICC warrant and Russia's recent actions in Poland. How much this blocks peace negotiations depends on how seriously you believe Putin has been taking these negotiations since they started in early 2025. The BBC also speculated that the ICC warrant would have no impact on Putin's approach to Ukraine back in 2023. Again, that's proven to be the case, as Russia hasn't for a moment reduced the intensity of its attacks on Ukraine because the ICC says that Putin should be arrested. But let's assume Putin is arrested. Though Russia has claimed that it would retaliate immediately, some think that the Kremlin actually wouldn't do a thing. One of those people is Olga Lautman, who is a senior fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis. Lautman told Newsweek, "In the hypothetical case that Putin was to be arrested by an ICC member, I don't believe Russia would do anything. When it comes to Germany or any NATO state, Russia would take no action because they fully understand they are not prepared to have a direct confrontation with NATO. That's the big issue for Putin. Most of the ICC members that are willing to arrest him are also NATO members, including Poland. A Russian retaliation for the enforcement of a legitimate ICC warrant would see the country forced into a direct conflict with NATO. Whether that conflict would involve the US or not is up for debate. Like Russia, the US isn't a signatory to the Rome Statute, which means it isn't an ICC member. Should Putin be arrested by an ICC and NATO member on that nation's territory, forcing a Russian retaliation, the US could make the argument that the arrest is illegitimate. It could even claim that the arrest is an act of aggression that started a war, which may mean the US wouldn't be obligated to come to its NATO allies' aid as it normally would under Article 5 of the NATO Charter. All of this is speculative, but there is a possibility that the threat of a NATO reprisal for a Russian retaliation isn't what it once was. Let's come back to the statement that started it all, Sikorski's claim that Poland will arrest Putin if Russia's president enters its airspace. Earlier we told you that there was some breaking news related to Putin's meeting with Trump in Hungary. The news is that the summit is off. That's according to The Telegraph, which reported on October 21st that Trump has decided against meeting Putin face-to-face in any country at any point in the immediate future. It's unclear whether Poland's threat of ICC-backed arrest played a part in the decision. The Telegraph says that the meeting was called off after a phone call between US and Russian negotiators took a bad turn. Perhaps that turn involved the US refusing to put pressure on its allies to enable Putin's safe passage to Hungary. We can't know for sure, as neither the US nor Russia is revealing much more. So Putin won't be traveling to Hungary after all. However, that doesn't limit the power of the message that Poland has sent to Russia and its leader. Putin now knows that he is not only not welcome in EU airspace, but that at least one EU member is willing to arrest him. Perhaps others will follow. It may be for the best that Putin isn't heading to Hungary, at least from Russia's perspective. Putin has plenty of problems at home without having to worry about being arrested. The Soviet collapse 2.0 is well underway as Putin is losing control of his own country. Find out more in our video and remember to subscribe to the Military Show for more coverage of the latest developments in the Ukraine war peace negotiations. And thank you for watching.